Sergeant Thomas Casey, United States Marine Corps, Vietnam. Tom was a sniper in Vietnam. You've seen the movie American Sniper. He was the American sniper in Vietnam. And when I interviewed these veterans back 15 years ago or so for Vietnam, for my Vietnam Remembered film, I listened to the whole story, but there were pieces of the story I used for the documentary Vietnam Remembered. So I've gone back and recently rediscovered that Tom was a sniper. In fact, he emerged as the deadliest sniper in Vietnam, folks. He's featured in a book called 13-Cent Killers, and in that book, the author of that book also was a sniper. And that was the most decorated regimental sniper platoon in Vietnam. But Tom enlisted in 1966 into the Marine Corps. Once a Marine, always Marine, hoorah, he is Marine to the core. Unfortunately, he had a stroke a couple years ago. He passed away in 2021, and we lost Tom. But his story lives on through my documentary series, through my radio station now. So honored to have met him in Spartanburg, South Carolina, March 22nd. It was 2007, and we reminisced. We had a great interview. This is one of my best interviews, folks. You're going to be really engrossed in the story. He couldn't tell the whole story in an hour, but he talked about his work as a sniper and how that happened. And it just really mesmerizes me just to listen to his story. I just been listening to it before I turned the camera on here. I want to thank Harry Marshall for sponsoring Tom's story. Harry, thank you for stepping forward. This is your story, man. This is a powerful story. Thank you for making it possible for many people to learn about what Tom did in Vietnam. It's just an incredible story, and thank you for your dedication to my work, our country, and our veterans. God bless you, Harry Marshall. Okay, folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story, you know what to do. There's information in the video description on my website, and if you'd like to donate to my work, in the comment section of these videos. Voices of History Radio is going strong, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can download the apps free on the app stores, and it's just a blessing. Over 40 countries now have listened to this radio station, and Tom's story will be there soon after it airs here. So just invite people to watch this. Tom served with the 5th Marine Regimental Sniper Platoon. Incredible story, like I said. These guys, what they did, they called that book 13-Cent Killers because it's 13 cents the government paid to make a round. And just incredible what they had to do. Like I said, it's an amazing story. So I hope you can watch it and get something out of it, and just share it with others, and share this channel, subscribe to this channel. Let's keep this thing going, folks. Freedom's not free, freedom is earned. Contained within these stories is why we have our freedoms, and we need to keep our freedoms. A lot of you have let go of your freedoms. We can't do that. We can't do that. We got to fight for our freedoms, fight for our veterans. And you know that if you're listening to this channel. And people are trying to erase the history that I've recorded. They're trying to erase it so you don't know about it, so you won't learn about it, so you'll make the same mistakes and let them control your head and control your life. That's called communism, folks. And we're not going to allow that. Everything within me will not allow that. The Second Amendment protects our First Amendment. Amen. Amen. All right. I'm going to stop there. I can get on a soapbox here. So thanks for watching, listening, subscribing, and share this story. Please share it. God bless you. briefly tell me, what year did you go to Vietnam again?
I went to Vietnam in June 1966.
Did you enlist?
I volunteered, enlisted in the Marine Corps.
What was the reason you went in, or was it pretty evident that all young men were going to have to go to Vietnam, or how did you feel?
I had always thought about making a military career, and I was in my second year at the Citadel in Charleston, which is we call the Citadel the West Point of the South. And it was involved in, it's actually the first shots of the Civil War was fired by Citadel cadets. And I wanted to join the Marine Corps. I wanted to go to Vietnam.
Tell me about that sense of duty to serve your country that you felt then, possibly.
I just felt like it was every young man's duty to serve his country. I'd been brought up like that. My father was never in the service. He lost his left arm when he was 15 years old, fell out of an apple tree and had to have it amputated. So he had never been in the service. I never really had anybody that I knew that had military backgrounds, but there was a guy in Woodruff that had been in the Marine Corps during World War II. He had been wounded on Okinawa.
Iwo Jima, Okinawa?
No. Guadalcanal. And he was a big burly Marine, and I decided that's where I needed to join.
That's what you need to do. So you find yourself at Parris Island?
Went to Parris Island.
So when you're a recruit at Parris Island, are the DIs, are they focusing on combat someday for you guys? Is that why they're so tough on you? Or are you guys all thinking we're going to Vietnam? Or?
Well, yeah, in 1965, the Marines had just gone to Vietnam, the first units. And so we knew that's probably where we were headed. But Marine Corps focuses on discipline, having been a drill instructor myself, discipline and teamwork. And so that's what they were focused on. Are
they doing what they do because of a combat situation someday that could save your life, or are they just being mean guys?
No, it's being so disciplined that you'll follow orders no matter what the orders seem like, no matter how dangerous the situation happens to be.
Does everybody reach that point at a different time, or does everybody do it as a unit? Or I would think that'd be a personal thing. And how does a DI know that a recruit is there at that, or do they ever know?
Well, the focus is on teamwork, and so when the whole platoon comes together as a team, that's when anybody that doesn't come together as a team is weeded out.
Is that unlike other training, or as far as the Marine Corps training? I hear the Marine Corps training is the best.
No other branch of the service compares with the Marine Corps training. You can go into another branch of the service from the Marine Corps and you won't have to go through basic. You come from another branch of the service in the Marine Corps, you have to go through boot camp. Totally
your
different.
Experience through boot camp was positive, prepared you, and then where'd you go to your advanced training?
Well, I was prepared for boot camp because of 2 years at the Citadel, because the freshman year at the Citadel is almost identical. The manual, the drill manual at the Citadel is the same one used at Parris Island. After recruit training, you go to Geiger, which is advanced infantry training. And so that's when you learn that's the John Wayne School. You get to fire the flamethrower, all the different weapons. You go through all these combat courses, and it's live fire courses, and it's fun.
John Wayne School. Huh?
Yeah, John Wayne School there. Yeah.
So you're a young man. I mean, you find yourself going to Vietnam. Can you tell me what you remember about going in country the first time, and what you felt, what it smelled like, what it looked like, and just tell me about your arrival into Vietnam.
Just before that, I was actually in the Marine Corps 2 years, volunteered 3 times, and the third time it didn't matter because they needed a quota. And so 120 guys out of our platoon. So I pulled a MEG cruise out of Camp Lejeune, 6 months in the Mediterranean. And after that MEG cruise, they needed people for Vietnam. And so that's when I actually got chewed out the second time I volunteered by the company commander. He says, "Who do you think you are? The commandant has promised all Marines they're going to get their chance to go to Vietnam. So you get back in line and wait just like me and everybody else."
What's the big rush to get there? I mean, is it?
Well, it was just that's why I joined, was to go to Vietnam. And I was just young and foolish. And, I didn't know.
Well,
I didn't know what to expect.
You get to Vietnam, and tell me about just getting there and being a new person in country. And did you feel invincible? Did you feel like nothing's going to happen to me? And then tell me about your baptism under fire, as it were.
Well, young Marines, everybody thinks they're bulletproof. And there were people that volunteered to go that, they'd been in the Marine Corps 3 or 4 years, and they had to extend their time to go, and people would ask them why they were going, and they said, well, it's like being on a baseball team and never getting in the game. And so they wanted to get in the game. I arrived in Vietnam in June of '66, and had no idea what kind of outfit I was going to. Every Marine's trained a rifleman, so I just figured I'd be in infantry. When I arrived, I was in charge. We got called out early. 45 of us put on a plane in California. And I was a corporal. There was a staff sergeant and 2 corporals. So we were in charge of the whole crew that was going. And stopped in Okinawa for 24 hours. Left a sea bag behind and got on another plane, a larger plane with more people, into Vietnam. And we were held in Da Nang one night and sent to Chu Lai, and then went out their outfit the next day. So we didn't know what kind of outfit we were going to. And I ended up in Headquarters Company, 5th Marines, and I said, I was looking for a grunt outfit, the infantry, and I said, what's in the Headquarters Company? And they said, well, there's a security platoon, a communications platoon, and a sniper platoon. So the guy that told me that was a company clerk. I said, you pull my records and give them to whoever's in charge of sniper platoon. And I had been a team shooter at Lejeune. I'd fired the high score out of my platoon at Paris Island, graduated #1. I had been a team shooter in the Mediterranean. We fired against the British over there for the Cassidy Cup. So I was a team shooter, Marine Corps there. And I had also been to a scout and sniper school, battalion level. And so when the lieutenant who was the platoon commander for the sniper platoon saw that, he picked me up immediately, because I was really, they had a volunteer group of people volunteered to be snipers in Okinawa. They came over by ship. And none of them were qualified. There was only one man in the whole platoon that was qualified to be a sniper, besides me. And I was qualified, and they saw that, so they picked me up immediately.
So tell me again about that invincibility, getting into combat maybe for the first time, and maybe do you lose that feeling and realize I could get killed?
Oh yeah. My brother was in the Air Force, and I wrote him a letter saying, I don't think I'm going to come through this. This is a long 13 months. And my baptism by fire was my 2nd or 3rd day in country. The day before I got there, the first casualty for snipers, they had either been in country 2 days or 2 weeks, this sniper platoon. And the day before I got there, they came under fire, and one of the men was wounded. And when the helicopter came in to medevac him, 51 caliber opened up. And it killed the crew chief of the chopper, and a Marine sniper was evacuated, and I never met him, never saw him. So I was the first replacement to replace him. The 2nd or 3rd day I was there, I was sent with a staff sergeant and or a squad and that's 5 two-man teams. So a squad of snipers down the 1st Battalion. And I went out, and 2 very experienced corporals took me and this other guy out, and they told us what to do. They told us to sit in and watch. They were going to draw fire and we were supposed to look for the ones firing at them. And that's exactly what they did. And we could not spot the people, but that's the way they used us in the beginning. And then we started more experience. We could spot them, and we could get them. We could fire back and eliminate them. The 3rd or 4th day I was there, we left one morning, the battalion, at 2 o'clock in the morning, and went out. We were going to get set in before daylight, and they called us back in. And what had happened, this was when I think it was the second Medal of Honor winner in Vietnam, Staff Sergeant Howard, and a book just came out, Hill 88, and he and this recon platoon was on this hill and surrounded by a battalion of Viet Cong, and they actually got down to where they were throwing rocks. They had a few hand grenades left. They'd used up most of their bullets. They were firing AK-47s. They took off the enemy dead, and they were barely evacuated. Well, the company, the Charlie Company 1-5, who I was with, that morning we went out. They called them back in to be the Sparrowhawk to come in and relieve this recon, Staff Sergeant Howard's recon platoon. And so why they did not take us as snipers, I don't know, but they didn't take us. They flew out without us. And they had a company sharpshooter who they used as a sniper, and he was the only one that was killed that morning from Charlie 1-5 because they put him down to counter snipe, and he was killed.
So you're into Vietnam. Are you a sergeant at this time?
No, I was a corporal. I was promoted to sergeant. Well, I became, I was no, I was not a squad leader immediately when I got there. But I was a corporal, so I was a fire team leader, a sniper team made up of two people, a shooter and a spotter. So I was the shooter. I later became the squad leader and then the platoon sergeant. And I was the only one out of that whole group. I was the only one, except one other guy. There were two of us that actually survived out of that. And I'm not talking about kill, but these guys, the morale, they were not used as snipers in the beginning. They were used to string barbed wire and build sandbag bunkers, fill sandbags, and take care of a village security platoon, which I ended up in charge of that security. But the morale got bad. They were not being utilized as snipers, but as a security platoon. And so the attitude got bad. And so I volunteered 3 times to get out of snipers, but a new company commander came in, new battalion commander came in. They finally decided they were going to keep snipers. And so I was used to build this new sniper platoon. So I'm the original 5th Marine sniper.
Okay. Now, I think I saw in the back of the book, let's see here, it's talking about, let's see here, really quick. Well, ambushes. Were you involved with ambushes?
I led 48 combat ambushes. I took part in about 35 raids, one-day raids, search and destroys. I took part in 11 or 12 operations. They named operations. You went out and they named an operation. They would have a concentration of VC, okay, and they would send a battalion or regiment size of Marines out to try to entrap the large group of VC, Viet Cong or North Vietnamese regulars. And if they had contact in the first 4 days, or if they didn't have contact in the first 4 days, they would call off the operation. If they did, then it became a major operation like Union, Union 2, Swift, Essex. These were big operations.
Tom, just give me a couple stories of some of these patrols, ambushes, just engaging the enemy. I mean, maybe as a platoon sergeant, you know, the men that were with you and losing some of these men and then just continuing on your mission. Just give me a couple stories that maybe come to mind.
Well, the first guy we lost out of our platoon, his name was Dennis Bolton. He was 17 years old. His parents had to sign a waiver for him to go to Vietnam. The Navy would not let him off the ship until he turned 18, and 2 months later he was dead. Dennis Bolton came into the platoon, and we had people going every different way. I volunteered for every mission that came along, got chewed out because the company commander said, "You're supposed to be training these people." I said, "I am. I'm taking a new person to the field each time I go. I teach him what I know, and then he picks up another partner and he trains them." I said, "That's the only way I know to do it." And but Dennis Bolton was in the group that replaced us at ANWY. I took a group of three sniper teams to ANWY, which was a really bad area, in January of 1967. And I was wounded on Operation Independence, and when I returned from the hospital, a new squad had come in to replace us. And Dennis Bolton was in that squad. Well, in John Cubberson's second book, A Sniper in Arizona, he tells how John Bolton was killed. I was a platoon sergeant, didn't know how he was killed, Dennis Bolton. I didn't know how he was killed until I read John Cubberson's book. And John was on the Spare Hawk that went in to pick him up. So you constantly dealt with the people that I worked with in the Marine Corps. Small, you got to know names, you got to know people, and those are the ones that get killed. And so I was constantly seeing. It got to where I would read the names of personal friends of mine from Lejeune, where we'd pulled med crews together. Two of my very best friends, and I read their names in the Sea Tiger. And I just got to the point where I was glad it was somebody else's name rather than mine. And I wrote my brother a letter, who was in the Air Force, and told him, that 13 months is a long time. I'm a positive person now, but back in '67, when the new guys would come into the platoon, I'd tell them they were in the Marine Corps, they had a job to do, and they better do that job until their time came. A good friend of mine from the Citadel, John Fuller. I flew with my company commander and regimental commander over to ANWY. After I left, I went back to check on men that had been wounded and medevaced out. And I introduced my company commander to my good friend John Fuller. As a matter of fact, I was his first WIA when I was working with him. But I introduced my company commander to him, and my company commander came to my tent in April. It was a week or two after we had come back from ANWY, and he said, "What was Lieutenant Fuller's first name?" And I said, "It's John L. Fuller." And he said, "Well, I'm sorry to inform you that he and all of the officers in Echo Company were either killed or wounded yesterday." And so he received the Navy Cross, and he was a good friend and a good Marine and good platoon commander.
Just tell me about a combat situation. What kind of weapon? You guys fighting as a line of defense? You attacking? I mean, just give me something visual that I can relate to, and then maybe any type of things you're telling your men to do, and then the enemy engagement.
Okay. When I got to Vietnam, we were using M14s. And then in October, when they finally decided we'd be snipers, we got 7 M1Ds. That was used during Korea. It was an M1 that had 2.5 power scope on it. And half of those actually worked. 4 out of the 7 actually worked. The Marine Corps adopted a Remington Model 700, 5-shot, 3 to 9 variable power red field scope, and a heavy barrel. The Marine Corps adopted this weapon, and 900 were ordered in 1967. So we got those in February 1967. The Marine Corps actually got 900 of these. So we got some for our platoon, and at that time, our kill ratio went way up. In January and February, our platoon had personal kills of 60 in 2 months. Just before I came back from Vietnam, I'll tell you this story. Operation Union was where the 5th Marines met a large, I don't know how large it was, but we killed over 2,000 Viet Cong. And the casualties, Marine Corps casualties, were heavy. They were taking cooks, they were taking office pogues to the field. And I was out. It was actually between I forget how many casualties we had, but between Union 1 and Union 2, and the same thing happened in Union 2. It was almost a continuation, and we killed another 3,000. So we killed 5,000 Viet Cong in a period of 2 months. And I was in the field with the same outfit that I was first in the field with, Charlie 15, and I used to know the company commander's name. He was later wounded, and I had a new man with me, and it was almost the last day of the operation, but we came under heavy fire. It was a U-shaped ambush, and that's what the Viet Cong used, was a U-shaped ambush. When you walked into one of those, it was usually all over. But it was a company, and this company commander knew what he was doing. We returned fire using a scope. I could see into the tree line, and it was just like practice. It was a matter of I shot a machine gunner. Another one came up to take his place. I shot that machine gunner, and then there was either an NCO or an officer standing there giving commands, and I shot him. So I made 3 shots, 3 kills. It was just, it was practice. It was something you were trained to do, and it was just a matter of chambering around and going through everything mentally that you had been trained to do as a sniper and as a shooter. And we overcame the ambush, and it was right at the end of May. So it was, you didn't think when you came under a combat situation, you didn't, a calm and peace took over because you knew what you were supposed to do. And so at first there's confusion, but then when you got into your job and got into your rhythm.
So that was like a specialized deal you're doing. You weren't just engaging in firefights, shooting back and forth. You were doing specific things,
Right.
targets. And,
Right.
Were you like part of a recon platoon, or?
No, we would be attached. Every sniper team was they either went out with a fire team, which would be 4 men, or a squad, which could be anywhere from 10 to 20 men, and sometimes you'd be dropped off by yourselves, the 2 men, while the squad or the fire team went out to draw fire, like I mentioned in the beginning, and then we would counter snipe, but you were never out there on your own. Now, Carlos Hathcock, as you mentioned, there are several tales where he was actually out there on his own, and that should never have happened. If that had happened to a Marine in the Arizona territory, he would not have come back.
So you said you lost men in your platoon?
Yeah, we had, actually during my 18 months, this 18 months that 13 Cent Killers covers, 47 men, we actually only had 3 men killed in combat, but over half the platoon was wounded at least once.
At that time, I mean, your mentality as a young man, do you feel conscious of the fact that you're fighting for God and country, or is it a matter of survival?
I always felt like I was fighting for God and country. It was a job, and you just did your job. So I didn't know whether I'd survive or not, and it sometimes didn't think I would. But
well, what got you through the hard times, Jeff? Was it maybe your faith in God, your training? What got you through those more difficult times?
Well, I'll have to say at that point in time, I thought I knew God, but I didn't. I'd always believed in a God, a supreme being. I believed in the guys I was working with. I believed in the Marine Corps. We were trained as a team. We were trained to help each other. We were trained to lead. The Marine Corps, you can get down to the last man, a lance corporal in the company, and he's been trained to take command if he's the ranking man in the company. And this has been shown over and over again from World War II, where the casualty rate was 55%, and you're not even supposed to be able to function, but the Marine Corps did, because they were trained in leadership all the way down to the last man.
Good point. And you became a drill instructor. What year were you a drill instructor?
I returned from Vietnam in July of '67, got married in August to young lady had been waiting on me for years, and we'd been dating. I felt like I met her in church, raised her the way I wanted her, and then we got married. That's not really the way it happened, but we've been married now for this year be 40 years. And
so back then, were you writing each other letters?
oh yeah, yeah.
Well, how important was that as far as your morale or just, life back home?
Very important. And of course, all of the things you hear about Vietnam where people didn't have support and all these demonstrations were going on, us being from the South, everybody was very supportive of us as individuals. Whether they supported the war or not, they supported us. And so my family from this area, my family are very supportive. My brother and I both in Vietnam, and my fiance was writing to me on a regular basis. And so I didn't have any mental stress of what was going on back in the United States. My focus could be on what I was doing there, and it was all support, love and support.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
That is good. That which a lot of people didn't have that. You're exactly right. Yeah, that is good.
So as a drill instructor now, you're out of Vietnam. Were you at Parris Island?
No, we got married here, drove cross country, and I went through DI school, which is just like going through recruit training again. There were 63, and these are supposed to be the best NCOs in the Marine Corps. One was even from Thailand, a Thai Marine. There were 63 of us that started, only 40 graduated. I saw 5 office hours and summary court martials, which is the most I saw the whole time in the Marine Corps. Guys would go out and get drunk at night, and they start yelling and throwing trash cans to get you up at 4 o'clock in the morning. They wouldn't get up because they were NCOs. And anyway, 40 of us graduated. I graduated number 3 from DI school, and became a drill instructor to train these new recruits coming through, and we knew where they were headed when they finished, which was Vietnam. Marine Corps recruit training lasts anywhere from, at the minimum, 8 weeks, and at the maximum, 14 weeks. And I think it was about 10 weeks when I was a drill instructor at San Diego. We'd turn out a new platoon.
How many classes did you train?
Only 4. I was there 4. I had taken 3 tests to get a commission while I was in the Marine Corps. Failed all 3 tests by what amounted to be 1 point each. And the last one was the enlisted commissioning test. There were 5 parts. I failed 2 or 3 of them, but it amounted to overall 1 point. I saw the handwriting on the wall. They were paying me more to get out and go back to school than they were to re-up. So I got out to go back to school. By the time I graduated from college, the war in Vietnam was winding down, so I went to work for the government as a special investigator for alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, Treasury Department.
Right. But as a drill instructor, what was your goal with those new recruits?
To be an example to them, to teach them teamwork, and to teach them discipline. And we did that.
What's the end result of that training for the recruit?
What was that?
What's the end result for the recruit in receiving their training? Was it just to say that I'm a Marine, or was it to survive in combat situation?
They become a Marine, number 1, and to teach them survival, yeah. To teach them teamwork, and if they work together as a team, they will survive. So,
Can a recruit ask you why you're doing something, or is that not something they do?
no. They wonder, and they don't see the mentality of some of the training, but everything we did had a purpose. Everything. It's in the manual. We even did some things that weren't in the manual, but everything has a purpose, and it's to turn these boys into trained Marines.
That's just an amazing thing that they go through that transformation, and seeing the end result of the training, and why, because you were there in Vietnam.
That's right.
And so did you ever sit down and have talks with them about combat? Did they ever have an opportunity to ask you, or is that not appropriate in training? How do you communicate to them the battle? Is it just through the discipline, or is there a time where you open up and talk to them?
You have 3 drill instructors per platoon, and one is a senior drill instructor, and he's kind of like the mother and the father to them. The other two are regular, hard-driving SOBs, and so we never talked to them too much. We were all disciplined, all hardcore, but there were a couple of times when you would have them in a training situation. I remember one situation in San Diego when this recruit said something about I was teaching them rifle marksmanship because we were at the rifle range, and one of them spoke up and said something about a sniper, a Marine sniper, made this kill at such and such a distance. And my having been a platoon sergeant back from Vietnam as a Marine sniper, I told him if I needed any information out of him on that, I would tell him what it was. But I did tell the platoon at that time a story of how the snipers came about, and that I had been there in that capacity. And there was also a time where one of the last platoons I took through, you have to qualify. And we're teaching the platoons to qualify. And I did this, and not supposed to do it, but I'll tell you this story anyway. This platoon was going to go through, and I told them that I'd been a sniper in Vietnam, and I said, but now you're going to qualify, and I have to qualify this same month. I'll qualify a week before you, and so you're going to qualify. And so what you need to learn is you do the same thing consistently every day, and practice it over and over. And I said, anybody in this platoon that beats my score, I'll bring them a beer into the barracks. And if you don't drink beer, I'll bring you a Coke into the barracks. Well, they didn't get Cokes or beer or anything during the recruit training. But I said, anybody that beats my score, for every point you beat my score, I'll bring you a beer or Coke. So I really put my rear on the line. And I went out there, and as a matter of fact, every night, that night before the next day, I went out and got drunk every night that night. And the last night, I got so drunk I was coming in at daybreak, and I couldn't find my rear end with both hands that morning. And the house mice were in there cleaning up, and they could see. And the gunny, he's saying, "Oh my goodness, there's Tom." And I went out there, and it was so bad that I was out there calling Ralph on the 200-yard line, throwing up before we fired. But with the training I had, I just got into the groove and fired. And I came back that afternoon. I probably looked like death warmed over, and come in, and the gunny had the whole platoon in there. And he comes into the DI quarters, and he said, "You want to tell them now?" He said, they want to know. So I came out there and I told him, I said, "I told you, you can beat my score. But I said, I want you to know mine was the highest score recorded today. It was 242 out of 250. The highest recruit in that platoon that fired that week had a 229. So I just did what I was trained to do, and did it very well.
Okay. Back in Vietnam, Tom, I haven't read this book, but how would you define combat?
Who was it that described war as hell? Combat is total chaos and confusion. You have to be well disciplined and trained to keep your wits about you when you come under fire. Men are screaming, men are dying, people you count on are wounded, and you don't know when you're going to be next. That's when the discipline kicks in, and that's when the teamwork kicks in. Everybody knows what their job is. You tell them to do their job, or you tell them what to do, and they do it in the Marine Corps. I don't know about other outfits, but I know the Marine Corps has the discipline and the teamwork and the training before they ever go into combat. And I was confident that I had that before I went to Vietnam.
What about interaction with the helicopters in and out of landing zones? Were you part of that? And tell me maybe a couple missions that come out, and if you landed in the hot LZ.
That's the scariest part of everything, is when you're coming in on a helicopter and a hot LZ and the rounds are flying and the support fire's going on. And one time I saw a cluster bomb go off over here on the side, and that's like a contact tablet where the big bomb explodes and then all these little ones go out and explode, the cluster bomb. And it was the first time I had seen one. And the rounds are going off, and the guys on that side of the chopper are ducking. And you're wanting to say, you stay up on that side because if a round comes to that side. But that's the scary part. You're not able to do anything. You're just sitting there waiting to land or coming in to land. And that's the scariest part. Once you're able to get off that chopper, then you've got the ground under your feet and you feel like you're in charge again.
Is there a lot of adrenaline, or is there a lot of fear on board, or are you just all focused on what you're going to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of fear on board, and the adrenaline's pumping. You're ready to go. You're ready to get off. You're ready to move, and you can't move until that chopper hits the deck.
Are these Huey helicopters?
These are we used basically two kinds. The Marine Corps in Vietnam. One was a Huey. And the other one, we didn't have the gunships, the Cobras and all like the Army had. And the other one was a C-46, I think it is. They still have that today. It's still the basic Marine Corps helicopter today, the C-46. And that was a larger, you could carry more men on that. But we used the Huey most of the time in Vietnam.
So you're loaded, ready to go, and you get into a landing zone, and then do you set up a perimeter, or what do you do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get immediately off the chopper into a perimeter and then start moving in whichever direction you're supposed to go.
And your goal, again, is being a sniper. That's different than the regular unit. Right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. The grunts, the infantry, they determine that. You just go in with them, and you're attached. You're told what to do. A lot of NCOs, a lot of officers did not know how to use snipers when I was there because this was brand new to them. The lower level, the corporals knew how to use them, just like when I first got there. These two experienced corporals took us, set us up to counter snipe. They went out and took fire to have us counter snipe. They knew exactly how to use us, how they wanted to use us, and they knew how to use us.
Did you go on first, or were you mixed in, or last?
We were mixed in.
And how do you determine a target? I mean, you're a sniper. Why couldn't a grunt shoot the target? Why would you have to shoot the target?
Well, like I said, we were used to counter snipe, or we were used to set up in a position where the squad or the fire team goes out, and we would watch the areas around them to, sometimes, as a matter of fact, one of the very first times that I went out, a group came in behind the squad, and of course they were going to try to hit this squad from the rear. Well, we're sitting up here on a hill watching, and so I took out the last VC there, and they realized there was somebody else out there besides that squad they were following. So that's we were used in that capacity. We were used as observation points to see what enemy activity was taking place in the area. One time we were set up on Buddha Mountain. I forget what operation it was, Stone or something like that. And we were on the mountain. We got on the mountain before daybreak. And so as the sun came up, I'm observing two guys with rifles on their shoulders down yards away, down in front of me. Well, I'm scoping in. I'm ready to take these two guys out. And I watched, and then I realized they were part of the Popular Forces. Now, sometimes the Popular Forces were also VC, but these guys, it was like a police station or something down there in this town, and I came very close to taking out supposedly friendly forces. But you were supposed to be engaged you were supposed to be taking fire or in a place they called I forget what they called it now, but in other words, any person you saw in that area, in that area of operation that had a weapon was an enemy. And so that was a free fire zone there. And since this was a new area we just moved into, I wasn't sure that we weren't in a free fire zone. And but I held my fire, and it was a good thing because I would probably have killed the popular forces.
Did you see that movie Enemy at the Gates?
Yes.
Did you like that?
Yes.
That pretty good depiction of maybe what a person would do in that capacity?
Yes, and true story. And the only thing there was they weren't shooting at distances. They were shooting at very close quarters in a city, you see. And most Marine snipers' kills in Vietnam were in the average of 450 yards, and there were kills up to 1,800 yards, which is over a mile away. But when you go back in history, in the Civil War, the North and the South both, their sharpshooters on both sides had kills at over a mile. And it's hard to believe that when you think about the weapons they had as compared to the weapons we have. Now the Marine Corps now utilizes a bolt-action 50 caliber Barrett, and that weapon will kill up to 3,000 yards away, and it will take out tanks because the bullet is about that long, and armor piercing will actually go through a tank and explode the ordnance inside the tank. There was a Marine sniper in Kuwait that took out 3 tanks.
Tell me about, how long were you in the Marine Corps?
3 years and 11 months. They let me out a month early to go back to school.
When you came home, you didn't have a lot of the problems a lot of the vets have suffered with, and you went on with your life. And did you ever have any thoughts about killing people in Vietnam later, or was it just a job and that was it? And your hands are clean of that. I mean, did you ever have any problems with any of that?
No, it was just a job to me. Now, I won't say I didn't have problems. I drank very heavily for a number of years, and was engaged in many barroom fights, and I thought I was still a Marine on leave, and I went with the Treasury Department, and I was still I was a hardcore drinker and brawler for many years until I came to know the Lord.
What a story, huh? Yeah.
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, I say so.
That my wife stayed with me, and that I wasn't killed or didn't kill somebody else in the process.
How about, tell me about going to the wall, why you went the first time and what you felt and what, you know.
Well, I've only been to the wall once, and we had a reunion in Quantico, and a bunch of us went up, all the guys, we went up to the walls, the guys and their wives. We had a picture made in front of the wall, and one guy from California brought these medals that he had made, and he gave each of us one, and he left one in front of the wall, in front of one of our guys' names. That wall is it's awesome. You see all those names. I just know too many names on the wall.
Men that were in your platoon, or just
Men that I was at Citadel with, men that I trained with at Lejeune, men that I served with in Vietnam. Only three names from my platoon from the time that I was there. There were only 3 names that I personally knew out of my platoon, and I think that's because these men were trained well. They did their jobs, and the Lord decided it wasn't their time.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's right.
I don't think you ever lose that, do you?
No.
If you really
No.
went through that and took it to heart.
Marine Corps is for life. A Marine is trained, and Marines are there for life. And there's a special camaraderie. We've had 3 guys to die in the last couple of years, and their families they said, you guys just have something special together. And
in combat, that camaraderie is there?
yeah.
maybe at a different level, but it's there, and you're watching out for each other.
That's right. You're fighting for the guy next to you, whether you know him or don't know him, because that's what you were trained to do.
Were there corpsmen around helping the wounded a lot? And were you ever in a position where you could help someone that was wounded?
Oh yes, yes. I've carried out the wounded before. We had a hill overrun just beyond our hill 12 days before Christmas, and I think we carried 11 bodies off that hill. And I've carried men out that looked like they wouldn't survive, that survived, and I've carried men to a chopper that you thought he was shot in the leg and he would die. So you don't know. That will to live, a lot of people have the will to live, and then some do not.
Were there, in World War II, I talked to people that were chaplains and ministers of some sort, praying for the wounded. Did something like that in Vietnam ever happen? Did you guys have chaplains or ministers or rabbis or?
Yeah, oh yeah, we had services. There was one chaplain, I was not there at the time. He received the Medal of Honor. He was out there on the battlefield giving last rites and all on the battlefield, and was killed during Swiffer, Essex. It was a couple of months after I left Vietnam, but he received the Medal of Honor. The corpsmen, Marines, have no greater respect for anybody than the corpsmen. They're out there when everybody else heads down. They're running around taking care of the wounded, and you see one of the flag raisers on Iwo Jima was a corpsman. And I'm in touch with a real good friend of mine now in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was a corpsman. And he was right there on our hill. He took care of us, whether it was skin up from fights or snake bites or wounds from anything from napalm to explosions or bullet wounds.
He's in where in Ohio?
He's right outside of Cleveland.
You're in touch with him?
Yes.
Well, you might mention that. I've interviewed you, and I'd be interested in talking to him.
Okay. Well, he's in that second book, the Once a Marine book. He's in there, and another good friend of mine who went to boot camp with me, Joe Keys, out in Texas.
What part of Texas?
Houston.
Okay, I'll be in Houston in November.
Well,
We got to be in touch.
yeah.
Tell him that.
Oh
It's
yeah.
important to
Oh yeah.
record.
I will definitely put him in touch with
I
you.
may forget, but if you can do that,
I'll do
I
it.
would appreciate it.
I'll do it. Yes.
Okay.
And you'll want to interview him. He was with a grunt company the whole time, and his son's already pulled 2 tours. Well, he's out now, but he pulled 2 tours of duty in Iraq. He's out and going back to school and returned safely.
Good. Tom, being a veteran and an American citizen, what does freedom mean to you?
Wow. We have unparalleled freedoms in this country, and a lot of people just take that for granted, but it's been, the freedom we have been paid for with the blood of men and women through the years. And so freedom's not free, it's a bought commodity with lives.
How about the American flag? What does it mean and represent to you as a veteran?
It represents this country. It represents the men that I've served with. It represents freedom. It represents a nation that won't take stuff off of other countries. And George Bush is a man who won't back down. And it scares me to see who might become president one day. People that have not served in the military, people that do not respect the country, people that don't respect that flag. It scares me.
Me too. I told somebody if Hillary Clinton becomes president, I'm moving to Canada.
Well, I had a young Marine just tell me in a grocery store. He's over there. He was wounded one time in Iraq. He's kind of recuperating now. He's going to be going back, and he says, I said, are you going to make a career out of it? And he says, well, that depends on who gets elected president. And he says, if Hillary Clinton or Obama,
Yeah.
He said, if either one of them get elected, he says, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. He said, I may be getting out of the country.
It's scary.
It's scary. It is scary.
Boy, I tell you, we think alike.
I'm glad. Great. I was hoping this wouldn't be a Michael Moore type thing.
You know what? I just had a thought. I think I'm a Marine at heart.
I believe you are too. From talking to you earlier, I believe you are.
I have a friend who's an Iwo Jima veteran. His name's Tony Visconti. He was on Iwo Jima, 5th Marine Division, and he wrote me a letter a while back, and he said, Semper Fi. He says, we don't say that to everybody, but he says, we consider you one of us. And what a compliment.
That's right. That's right. That was a compliment. That's right. That was a compliment.
Wonderful, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I could tell you some stories of what I've heard, but anyways, it's just wonderful to see that and wanting to. I personally want to be part of a camaraderie, and I feel very isolated with my work, but it's nice that I can meet people like yourself and talk and share. But probably just a couple more questions, and we'll wrap this up. But what do you think the American public should remember about Vietnam?
Well, I think there were many lessons learned in Vietnam. I've read Schwarzkopf's book, and of course he pulled 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, and it was obvious to me in Desert Storm that lessons were learned by Powell and by Schwarzkopf that turned that Desert Storm into a very short war, 100 days war instead of a 10 years war, and the point is the military should control the war, where in Vietnam you had Congress controlling the war, and you had people that were not willing to go all the way, as Lyndon B. Johnson. They weren't willing to invade North Vietnam. Nixon, who I named my son after, he was born the day after Nixon resigned, and Nixon brought the North Vietnamese to the peace table by bombing North Vietnam. There was a 5-point plan by the Joint Chiefs of Staff to end the war, which included mining Haiphong Harbor, bombing the rice paddies, flooding North Vietnam by bombing Hanoi, and I forget what the other 2 points were, but this was proposed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the President and Congress would not do it. And Westmoreland was willing to stay there till the end of the war. He said that, but when he saw that it was they weren't interested in winning, he finally came home. And he lived down there in Charleston, South Carolina until he died. And I think that there was a confusion in this country that they didn't want to win the war. And the media was part of the problem, and media is the problem today. And the people in Hollywood, Michael Moores and so forth, that they say they support the troops, but they're not supporting the troops. And it was obvious the liberal Democrats with John Kerry's statement, his actions after he came back from Vietnam, his statements that he makes a fool of himself today, where he says, you better stay in school or you get sent to Iraq, you know.
So you came home, you transitioned back into civilian life, I guess, as best you can, but did you talk about the war after you came home?
No. You don't talk about Vietnam, you don't talk about war to anybody except those people who you've served with. Nobody else can understand too much on that level. I always told my son the funny stories, and it wasn't until the book came out that he realized everything wasn't funny. We talk about, we have these reunions now. We had a reunion in Quantico in 2001. This was just my platoon. In California in 2003, 2005, Maui, and this year, in June, we'll be going to Branson, Missouri. So we'll get together with those corpsmen, these guys still alive from the platoon, and we'll have a great time. There won't be a whole lot of talk about what went on there, a little bit, but not much. It'll be, we celebrate with families, we celebrate being alive, we celebrate freedom, and we do like to get together and have some fun. My wife is funny. She didn't go to Quantico because our daughter just had our first grandchild, and so I was telling her, now you need to go to California with us. She said, I don't want to go out there and be around all those drunken Marines. I said, it's not like that. I said, these guys, we've all grown up now. And she went out there, and when we got through, she came back. She says, these are quality people. And they are. They're quality guys.
That's good. Tell me why you talked to me today. When you saw the article in the paper, I think you saw the article.
No, I didn't see the article in the paper. It was a good friend of mine here in Spartanburg sent me an email and told me what was going on and told me that I needed to come over here. And so that's when I called you.
What prompted you? Just his recommendation or just the fact?
Well, he said that you were doing something as a documentary, a historical documentary on Vietnam, and I think we need to tell the real story instead of having the phony stuff that has been put out there. Everything from people, as a matter of fact, I heard a statistic not long ago that there are something like 1 million Vietnam veterans still alive, and yet there are 9 million people that claim to be Vietnam veterans. And this book, Stolen Valor, when it came out, that's part of it. And this new law that's been put into effect, people wearing military decorations as dress and never even been in the military. So I just think that I'm in favor of what you're doing. I'm in favor of history. I don't think the Korean War vets have received the recognition that they deserve. And Vietnam, there's been more and more written about Vietnam, and I think people are learning the truth. But it was that you mentioned earlier. I've spoken in high schools. This Belton Honeypath High School, there were some actually English teachers. You would think it would be history, but it was English teachers and something else. They have an ROTC unit, and this friend of mine who heads up that unit, civil graduate pilot, asked me, he knew me and he knew my story, and he asked me to come speak. And so I went down and spoke to his ROTC classes on several occasions. Then I took part in this high school, and they really, it's the best thing I have seen. And the teachers taught the children how to interview, how to ask good questions, and they asked really good questions. And I was really thrilled to see. And these kids don't know anything about the Vietnam War, but they had good questions. They've been trained to ask questions, and I gave them an overview of the history of fast facts and figures that I have, and spoke to them. And there were probably a dozen Vietnam veterans that took part in it, everything from women nurses to pilots to infantry.
I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. I hope it's okay. I understand the protocol of a salute, but if you saw the end of my film, I think you would understand why I do this very gracefully. But at the end of my interview, I asked for a salute from the veteran into the camera. Can I get one from you when I tell you?
Well, I need to be covered. Huh?
Do you have a hat?
I do.
Where's it at?
In the car.
You want to go get it?
Yes.
Or you're not comfortable saluting without it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well,
There's a distinct way to salute.